Um, so anyway, I wanted to mention the 50th anniversary of Insight Meditation Society, which has been the kind of my home base for my practice, at least the first 20 years. I go back to 1981 with that institution, and it was founded in 1976. Obviously, it's 50 years. And it was very touching in a certain way to think that, this institution has endured, and to just feel into the way that this teaching has been passed down for so many centuries, that there's been care given to preserving this particular tradition, which was primarily through monks and nuns until the 20th century rolled in. And now there's a much more of a lay sort of teacher presence in the world than there used to be. But as you know, when I went there with my wife Kate, and she asked me how it was, and I said it made me feel small in a good way, you know. It made me feel like I'm a little drop in a very large stream and long river um, of practice and transmission of the teaching, and the sense of something precious, something rare. It's still a relatively rare thing to meditate, to hear these teachings. Um, and it's actually something that you can celebrate and acknowledge in yourself, that whoever you are, you're the sort of person who'd show up in something like this. And that's relatively rare. To value the inner work that this represents, the desire to create a more wholesome inner world, and to create a more wholesome world in general. I think it's still a relatively rare thing. And yet I think the influence of that reverberates much farther than just what we think. So I felt like mentioning that. That wasn't going to be the total talk tonight, but the anniversary was significant to me to be at. And you never know if I'll be around for the 60th. I hope so. And to see everyone age, see these people. I mean, I think Joseph must have been about my son's age when IMS was founded. And, now he must be in his 80s. I don't really know what his age is, but I'm guessing. And to see, like a whole new generation taking over, and kind of realizing this stream that we are, this human stream. We all are born into it and we die out of it, and it continues. And we're only born into it because there's a human being, well, actually two human beings who have a child. And those human beings were raised and nurtured by their own human beings, or they wouldn't exist. And those human beings were raised and nurtured by their human beings, or they wouldn't exist. And back and back and back and back in time, clear back to where there aren't even human beings, there aren't even Homo sapiens. There's other sorts of primates, and further back. It's something that I contemplate. So what I was planning to talk about tonight, just a little bit about acceptance in the notion of surrender, and kind of a new thought, which which kind of struck me while I was on retreat with Jeannie, was she said that acceptance, it sounds like something you do, but it's actually not anything that you do. It flows very naturally from just being with what is. The being with what is acceptance. Just connecting with things exactly as they are. So as we do our meditation tonight, I pointed that out a few times, just what it's like to just be with what is. And sometimes, we may go into opposition to what is. A real common one is the wandering mind. Because there's this idea that good meditation somehow means your mind doesn't wander. And the instruction is to not just let your mind wander. There's nonetheless this feeling tone that sometimes develops with people of frustration with the way the mind wanders. It happens. And it happens of itself, in case you haven't noticed. There's no evil person in there who's trying to not follow instructions and having your mind wander off. There's no bad guy or gal in there that's doing it. It's just happening. And it's happening according to the momentum. If you've been kind of feeding the thought mind, then you suddenly stop and it keeps doing what it's been told to do until it settles. And so a lot of my instruction in meditation is to give you some help with settling. But if it's not settled, again, there's this extra thing that's added on to the mind is kind of busy. And then there's this aversion that comes up like, oh, I don't like this. Or there's something wrong here. Or I'm wrong. I can't do it. I'm a failure, so forth. All this is kind of sandwiched onto the original experience, which is just a lot of thoughts are happening. The attention doesn't stay easily in the body. It's like thoughts keep coming up. And there's a causality to that. And so with acceptance, there's just a kind of a bow to what is. Okay, the mind is busy. And even when the mind is in a rejection mode, kind of a frustration mode, again, there's a kind of bowing when you notice it. Oh, frustration. Oh, rejection. So everything as it's noticed simply is. The wandering mind, the frustration with the wandering mind, again, one can simply sort of bow to what is. And curiously, when you bow and when you really notice that there's this frustration and you really bow to it, something shifts. And it may take a little while, because thoughts might keep coming up to keep increasing the frustration, but there's a possibility of actually just feeling the frustration once it's named, rather than creating further story about it. But if you're creating further story about it, again, that's what's happening, is further story about it. But in each event, when you notice it, there's a possibility of staying, just staying with what is. So you might feel, and it's really in the body. At first, it might be in the mind, oh, I'm not supposed to be, my mind is wandering, I can't do this, there's all this sort of expression. But if you just notice, oh, this is frustration, then it's possible to just feel the reverberation in your body of that tension. And in feeling it, it can subside. And then you may be back with just where you started, maybe just the phenomena. Okay, thoughts keep arising. And you'll notice that if you don't resist the thoughts arising, but you simply notice them over and over, they start to settle a bit. They start to settle. There's also discomfort in the body. And once again, there's just like what's the word that I'm looking for? There's an interface to notice between what's just being sensed and the reaction to it. Although sometimes they blur a bit, Sometimes you can't see the tension that you're creating against something. It's hard to see. They get kind of sandwiched together. That's why I put my hands together like that. It almost kind of looks like there's one hand because they're so pressed together. So when you bring attention, acceptance follows quite naturally. That isn't to say that there's not further reactivity. But the further reactivity is usually a wavering of attention. It's usually not about okay, this is what is. And I can suggest that there's something beautiful. There's something beautiful and easeful in this practice of just being with what is, just noticing things as they are. There's like a burden that you can lay down, okay? Our egos think it's their job to make all our experience look like the way we think it should look. There's an enormous burden to that. They are, in the words of the suttas, a heap of suffering, dukkha kanda, a heap of suffering. This way that we believe we're supposed to be effective at making everything work the way we want it to work. And so there's such kind of freshness and ease sometimes. Just, okay, what is? What is right now? Not what do I want to make it into? Or how can I measure how far I'm getting with this? Or is it looking right? But just what is right now? There was a moment this morning, I got some news. What the news was doesn't matter. It was kind of town politics news. And there was kind of a moment of upset, and because there was a vote last night. It didn't go the way that I wanted. And so it happened like right before I was going to do my morning meditation. So, very fortunate in a way to kind of be able to have that kind of experience and then immediately have it in the context of practice. I mean, ideally, everything's practice, but I find it's helpful to have these defined times, like a meditation period where, okay, that's what we're doing here. And so I sat down, and where there's just like a strong disliking, the mind is like generating these thoughts. And at a certain point, I just dropped into the body with a question, which is, what am I really feeling? I just make this a feeling, because all the rest is kind of the story that's being generated in the feeling. But what's the feeling? I realized it was fear. There was fear. And so just to sit with fear in the body. And it's like my nervous system had gotten aroused, had got agitated by something. And when you take away the head part of it, when you take the story off, there's just the body kind of, it's gotten the message through your head that there's something wrong. And so it's actually in a state of preparation to do something, almost like you're an animal that's getting ready to run away from prey. It's the actual experience that our heads are creating in our bodies all the time when we're under stress. So just to kind of feel, oh wow, this is fear. And the body shifts slowly. It isn't like, oh, you just notice fear and then boop, it's gone, because it's pumped your body with chemicals and they have a certain kind of life, and your nervous system has to shift. So there it is, just acceptance of something that was intrinsically unpleasant. Fear is not a pleasant experience in the body, though oftentimes we don't even notice it. We're so in our head. We're so wrapped up in the thought generation and like, what am I going to say here? And how am I going to debate this? And all this sort of stuff. To just drop down fear. And then the body kind of digests it. The body digests whatever that state was, and it gradually dissipates. So acceptance. In this case, the acceptance was the knowledge of and the acceptance of the emotional state that was propelling the thoughts. Believe me, I'm fully capable of being lost in the thoughts and not even noticing the emotional state that's propelling them. This is often the common fate of humanity. And so to take the moment to actually see the moment is acceptance. So lack of acceptance in an odd way can be accepted. That, and in those moments, there's a deepening. It's like seeing what it is to be human, what the difficulty, the suffering of being a human, in just those moments that you take to be present with what it's like right now when you're upset about something, when upsetness becomes a reason for the meditation bell to ring, to know what is going on right now. And there's something in the heart that's willing to turn toward it. That's the power of the practice, that deep intention to turn towards what's happening in the moment of suffering and to see it clearly. And to play with the edge of like what can be done and what can't be done. And often there's not even enough consciousness to think to turn directly towards the moment and notice it. And that's the way things are as a human being. But when there is enough consciousness, it's like turn toward it. When you show up in a class like this and you get extra energy around an intention. To be present, to notice. So if there's some situation in your life you're having trouble surrendering to, rather than kind of being on the head level of, oh, I can't surrender to this, how can I surrender to this, so forth, you might just drop into, what am I feeling that I'm describing as I can't surrender here? I can't accept this. What is it that you're actually feeling? What's going on? Things become clear when we step right into the moment in this way. And they become clear when we step back from the content of our thoughts enough to notice the emotional energy that is grounded in. Things can look very different whether you're calm or you're in fear. It's like the mind puts the world together. There isn't really a world out there all objective by itself, the way we like to think. It's co-created by consciousness. And so the consciousness of fear will create perceptions or even draw out aspects out there. And we may not even see that it's fear that's shining the light on those aspects that are creating our fear. Whereas there could be the light of love that's being shown on a situation. And then other aspects appear. People look quite differently in the light of love rather than the light of fear. And it's actually out there that looks different, which is what confuses us as human beings. Why we don't necessarily notice our states is because we think it's in the people out there or the situation out there. That demands us to feel a certain way, demands a certain response. You know, and one can be sympathetic with that, obviously. You can be sympathetic with the type of response that a particular situation is going to evoke in people. But part of what we do in this practice is to notice what the lamp is we've got going, what we've got shining here. Is it the lamp of aversion? Of I don't like this. What I want isn't happening. Is it the light of what is this? What's happening right now? That's it. That's usually a reach that's within reach. That curiosity, just like, okay, what's happening right now? And touching into the power of what is, the power of knowing what is as it is, just right now. It could be as simple as recognizing, I don't know what to do here. And the kind of panic that comes from that. When it feels like an action is demanded of you. And sometimes it is. But just for a moment to let that, I don't know what to do here, exist and be known is a powerful thing. And it creates options, creates different options for having taken the time to feel it.